Good evening and welcome to Creativity Rules. It's such an honor and a splendid experience because I think more than as an interviewer, you should consider that there's a fangirl who is interviewing you. So it's always very, very special. Yeah. And I can prove it to you that I'm a fangirl because I've read this spectacular book that you've written called The Idea Book 2 to 3 times. And each time when I read it, there are new insights which comes, and some of the great ideas that I had, not great according to me, I don't know according to others whether they were great or not, they have come after a lot of scribbling on the book, which came and emanated from the stories that you had written. So thank you for writing this masterpiece, Fredrik. Welcome to Creativity Rules, Fredrik. Our intent is to really demystify what creativity means in the most simplest terms, and most importantly, give people very discernible practices by which they can build creativity as a muscle, because it's not like a very secretive, clandestine thing that few people are born with. I think it's a basic life skill that we all have. It's the matter of harnessing it. So we are really excited to have you on the show, Fredrik.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so Fredrik, the one-liner that I see on the t-shirt that you're wearing is the Creativity Explorer. So can you take us through that exploratory journey that led you to this juncture in your life, Fredrik? How did you discover that you had this innate passion for creativity and you were able to articulate it that I want to do something in the realm of creativity?
Okay, let's start with the moniker, the Creativity Explorer. I cannot take credit for. It's my son that can take credit for it. He's 10 years old. He was asked to do a presentation in school. What does your parents do for a living? And he was supposed to say, my father is a creativity expert, but he screwed it up. And he said, my father is a creativity explorer. And as soon as he said it, I realized this is a way better definition, because expert is somehow the word experts kind of puts a person on a pedestal. A creativity explorer is a much better definition of what I do.
Yes.
Because to explore literally means to venture into unknown territory in order to learn more about it. And for the last 25 years, I venture into the unknown territory of human creativity in order to learn more about it. So I'm an explorer in the area of human creativity, and I've been doing that for over 25 years, since I was 27 years old.
So at 27 years of age, you had this clarity that you want to become a speaker in the realm of creativity. How did that happen? Is it related to your childhood experiences, Fredrik, that you always had this need to find bugs around you, or had some creativity approaches? Because I think by the time we're 27, we are still figuring out with respect to the jobs that is going to pay us better. So how did you take that risk at that age, Fredrik?
No, the reason I became a speaker, I think, is because my mother was a teacher and my father was a musician. If you take musician and teacher, you put it together, you become an entertaining teacher, and that's what a speaker is. But I never thought I would become a speaker. My father would put me on stage when I was 5 years old. So I have no issue being on stage, and I love to learn new things. I'm curious about new things. I didn't become a creativity speaker at 27. I became a speaker on internet when I was 27, because when I was 26, I went to the US, and I saw it was 1993 or 94, and I saw the internet, and I thought, wow, this is going to change the world. And I wrote my university thesis about the internet, and then I became an internet expert because I had studied the internet for 10 weeks. I knew more about the internet than anyone else did at the time. And then for the next 5 years, I would write books and speak about creativity. And in the year 2000, I sold the company, and then I said, okay, now what do I want to do? And I said, okay, well, I'll write. The thing I really like is speaking, interviewing people, writing. And so, okay, now that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And then I said, but I don't want to do it about the internet, because the internet is as fascinating as it is. It's a bit limiting. So I said, actually, why don't I just do it on a more broader perspective? Because the internet was all about creativity in those first years, because whatever you did on the internet, it was new. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to study creativity, regardless if it involves creativity and the internet or creativity or anything else. And then since then and now the last few years I've been studying creativity on a very broad, from a very broad perspective. I'm exploring the unknown areas, which is much more fun.
Interesting. Fredrik, you have delivered over 2,000 keynote speeches in over 6 continents and 70 countries. You travel extensively. You have interviewed a lot of people, right from flamingo dancers to people in slums of Mumbai, and that's solid diversity. So tell us, what is your understanding of what creativity means in the most simple terms? And are there any telltale signs that can lead you to think or infer that the people around you are creative or not? What are the telltale signs of creative people?
Okay, so if you heard me speak anytime, you know that my definition of creativity is to take two things and combine them. And I use that to show that there are no new ideas. Every idea is a combination of something else. Every recipe is a combination of ingredients, and every idea is a combination of knowledge and information. So an iPhone is amazing, but an iPhone is just a computer and a telephone combined. And it's true for all. The bicycle is a horse and a wheel combined. So every idea is a combination of previously known things. And that's my definition of creativity. Now, sorry, what was the other question about?
What are the telltale signs that people demonstrate that can lead you to label them as creative people or not?
Okay. So I've interviewed some of the most creative people on earth. Just last week, I interviewed the founder of Siri and the founder of Netflix. So I mean, but not only famous people, like all kinds of creative people, I interviewed them, and literally tens of thousands of them. The most common denominator for people who are really creative is that they are curious. By far, the most important aspect of creativity is to be curious. And the word curious is a little bit, it's not a heavy word. People look at it and it's like they don't pay attention to the word. It sounds like something that children are, or something like a nice word. It's a profound word. And to explain how profound it is, we have to go into the meaning of the word. To be curious means to be profoundly interested in a topic. But the word from an etymology point of view, the word curious comes from the word cura, and the word cura means to care, which means if you are curious about something, it means you care about that subject. Which also means if you are not curious about your topic, it means you don't care about your topic or whatever area of work you're in. So it's a good, and think about if you go on a date with a person, a blind date, and you decide right away that this person is you're not interested in this person, you will ask no questions. But if you are really interested in this person, you will be very curious. You will ask a lot of questions. So, and creative people are curious about everything. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci, look in his notebooks, and you can tell right away that was a curious person. How does a bird fly? How can we make a better cannon? And like he would combine all. How can I make a man fly? All these questions, all these curious, and looking at how the wing is designed on a bird or whatever he was curious. That's what made Leonardo da Vinci Leonardo da Vinci. So we should actually talk more about curiosity.
It's interesting because you said curiosity comes from cura, which means to care about a particular subject, about a particular field, right? I want to know from you, if you care about your field, supposedly you become an expert. But at times I've seen that expertise comes in the way of being creative. So what is the relationship between curiosity and expertise, Fredrik?
Okay. So here's a good way to explain this. I did a speech many, many years ago, and it was for the plumbing association. So they were the plumbers, and they are very interested in plumbing, but they realized that what they really do with plumbing is to get rid of junk inside pipes. So they said, what other people work with getting rid of junk in pipes? And they contacted a heart surgeon who is, working with those balloons that they put into when people have too much junk in their veins, and then they have taken this balloon into your heart and they blow it up, the stents, and they had him come and talk about how do you get rid of the junk inside of the pipes we have in our body, because it had nothing to do with plumbing, you could say, but it had anything to do with plumbing. And then they were comparing notes about how do we get junk out of pipes. So you have to be very open-minded about what field you're really in. And that's when I say I'm the creativity explorer, I don't only interview heads of like the founders of Netflix or the founders of Siri. I also interview I can interview a taxi driver about creativity, or as you said, the slums of Mumbai, or a chef in Bangkok, or the nomads in Mongolia. I'm I'm curious about all kinds of human creativity. And so my field is, in that sense, becomes very broad.
Pretty expansive. So Fredrik, tell us your experience of interviewing, let's say, a CEO of a global organization versus that interview in Mumbai, or interviewing a nomad in Mongolia, or interviewing a flamingo dancer. How varied are these conversations that you do? Could you throw some light on those interviews and those conversations? How do you go about asking those questions? What does the process look like?
So I've tried to sit down and understand my own process, but I kind of like to have it a little bit unknown to myself, because I wouldn't be an explorer if I was following a map. Explorers don't use maps. Explorers make maps, right? That's kind of, so I don't want to be too much tied into the process. And I also, but the interviews are very, very similar, because I go there and my intent is to go as deep as possible, as quickly as possible. And I want the person to say something that the person has never said before, because that's when you get the interesting insights. Most people have done interviews before and they have these pet messages that they always want to communicate, and then they do that. But when you get someone to say, you know what, I've never said this before, and then they say that, then you get something new out of the interview. And that's what I'm trying to do. Very often when I interview, actually, I would stop people, I would interrupt them and say, okay, I know now you're just saying things you've said before. Let's go deeper, let's go deeper. So my goal is to go as deep as I can in an hour. I'm almost looking at myself as, you know, those divers that go, and the goal is to get as deep as they can without oxygen. It's just go deep, go deep, go deep. That's all I care about, because that's where all the surface have already been explored. I want to go deep, and I want to explore the unknown areas of creativity, but also the unknown areas of this person's personality or identity or being. And by doing that means I never have any pre-written questions, never. So I always will, I just ask one, I'll start, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then the person starts talking. And then I take something that sounds interesting and I go deeper and go deeper. I never have a purpose with my interview. I never have questions. I never send questions in advance. It's just about going, a road traversed in the forest that took the one less travel. That had made all the difference, right? So that's what it's all about. That's what discovery and exploration is all about.
Fredrik, I want to know from you, you said, explore, which means you're going into unknown and uncharted territories. And somehow there is a linkage between creativity and going into these unknown and uncharted territories. And I'm sure when you go in that realm, there is a certain degree of fear. There's a certain level of doubt. At least a normal person will have, whether this will work or not. How do you ensure that you get rid of all those doubts? Do you have these moments when you feel, I don't know if this interview is making sense. I don't know if I'm going to get insights. I don't know if this new thing that I'm going to incorporate in my keynote is going to make sense to people or not. So how do you keep yourself out of that fear or self-doubt? Or does that fear or self-doubt emanate in you at all?
No, I don't have that at all, because I'm not depending on that one interview actually leading to anything, because I do so many interviews. So it's not like I'm a chef preparing a dish and every dish has to taste well or they will give me a 1 star on TripAdvisor. I do an interview. If there's nothing comes out of it, okay, fine. That was an interview. It's more like going hunting. You go out and once or fishing, you go out, you didn't get any fish. You should worry if you never get any fish. The interesting thing though is that I can't think of a single interview where I didn't get anything out of it. So because I think if you not get something out of it, then I haven't been curious enough. So there's always something that comes up, maybe not earth-shattering insights, but there's some new insight that always comes out of, you spend 1 hour with another human being and you're curious about that person, you're bound to learn something. I learned that from the Swedish princess, actually. She was once interviewed. You sit at all these dinners with all the Nobel Prize winner dinners and everything, and you always look like you're having so much fun. And aren't you bored? And she actually said, the queen taught me that every person has an interesting story. It's all about, and if you know that, you will never have a boring dinner. I think it's very true. Now, when it comes to that fear thing, I think it's unfortunate that people connect creativity and exploration with fear. Yes, there is the unknown, but unknown is not necessarily scary. So if you think about the world, And like we only know a little bit of, like when you play computer games and you see this little map and then the rest of the map is black. Like, why would you assume that what's outside the map we can see would be more dangerous than what's inside the map that we can see? We should assume nothing is more dangerous. And as the map grows, we realize that suddenly that whatever was there is not scary, but whatever we cannot see, we assume is scary. And then that part of the map becomes seen, and suddenly we're not afraid of it anymore. I mean, I understand where it comes from. It comes from when we were living in the jungle and whatever we could not see could kill us. But we're way past that for most parts of the world. So I am not, if I go to a new country, my instinct is not, I'm going to be scared of going to this country. My instinct is going to be, this is going to be an amazing discovery, and let's see what we can find there. Creativity has nothing to do with fear. Creativity has about curiosity, which is almost the opposite of fear. I interviewed one person who works with lions in South Africa, because there is this saying, curiosity killed the cat, right? Don't be too curious, it will kill you. So I said, is this really true? So I interviewed cat experts and lion experts, because lions are just big cats. And she said that it should actually be the opposite. It's the curiosity that keeps the cat and the lions alive, because if they were not curious, they would die, right? So fear and creativity, there is some connection, but it's way too much emphasis on it. Way too much.
And you have a chapter on this in your book where you say we need to reinvent and recoin the metaphors. So that's the intriguing part.
Yes.
Fredrik, according to you, what kills curiosity in people? Because I've seen a lot of experienced people, and especially with their job titles, there are things like which sound like this. Ridhima, this approach will not work in this organization because we've tried it previously. Or I know enough of this field, what you're suggesting and what my team is suggesting will not work because I know this, how it's to be done. Or this idea is too risky, or this idea will not work on that scale. And at times that idea, which is not even expressed fully, gets killed even before it's born. So how is one supposed to deal with that? If you have a mindset like that, how will curiosity get nurtured or built in an environment like that?
Well, you're not in charge of anyone else's curiosity than your own, right? So you can be in the most bureaucratic and negative organization in the world. You can still be curious. Like you can sit in an extremely boring, I don't know, bunker, and where nothing is happening, and you can say this is an extremely boring place, or you can see if you can find something. It's actually becomes, from a curious person, it becomes more of a challenge, right? If you go into a candy store, it's not that hard to be curious. But if you go to a bunker, then it becomes a little bit more difficult to be curious. But the reward is so much bigger because most people will not see whatever interesting thing is there. I have this strategy for this is not about creativity. This is more like my strategy of life. I call it beautiful thinking. So beautiful thinking is whenever I'm in a situation, my go-to emotion is to find the most beautiful thing right there, right here and now. It's not only about being in the moment, it's being in the moment and having your attention on the most beautiful thing. So let's say, for example, I'm sitting in a very small Ryanair plane. Everyone is squeezed up. There's a baby crying. Or like everything is just terrible. There's nothing there to be, and I'm going to be there for 8 hours. Or I'm in an airport, let's say, and suddenly there's like nothing there. But find it. There is a flower. I can look at the flower. There's a woman smiling. I can look out and see. You can always look out and look at the sky and look at the clouds. There's always something that is the most beautiful in that moment. And if it isn't, your brain will create it. And so sometimes then you can go to your imagination and imagine something beautiful at least. But it makes even, and it's not positive thinking. It's very different from possible thinking. I can be in a, I can be in the middle of, I could have technically be in the middle of war and people dying all around me. I can still look for the most beautiful thing, even if that is the way the blood flows out of body. I mean, because when you focus on the beautiful, when you focus on the beautiful thing, your mind becomes calm, and you get focused on the present, and you also get you get like a beautiful mindset, not a positive mindset, and then you can solve whatever that blood needs to be fixed with that blood, instead of just focusing on all the negative things. So that's it's a great way to become more creative, because creativity, positivity, humor, beauty, it's all connected. If you ask anyone in any industry of the most creative solution they've ever seen, they will say it's a beautiful solution. It's a mathematician will talk about beautiful mathematical solution. A coder will talk about beautiful code. A copywriter will talk about beautiful copy. Or an art director will talk about a beautiful creative solution. So beauty and creativity, in the more profound meaning of the word beauty, really belong together.
Fredrik, one of the questions, or rather one of the comments that I often come across in the coaching conversations with people sound like this: Ridhima, you can afford to be creative because you're a freelancer or you're an entrepreneur. Well, I'm an accountant in this organization, and accounting by every means doing the same thing again. So what differences can I bring? It's not applicable to what I do, or I'm having a job. And at times I also hear this, well, creativity doesn't apply to our profession because you know what? I'm not a singer, I'm not a performer, I'm not an actor, I'm not a musician. You need creativity in those fields. What our field needs is expertise. And often, like, I'm left with a very blank expression, and I am at loss of words on how to respond to a question like this. What's your take on that, Fredrik?
Well, I'm a huge fan of etymology, so let's look at the word experience. What does the word experience mean? Means from out from, like exit, right? Experience means from taking risk and trying new things. That's the Latin meaning. So technically, experience means you get experience from trying new things and taking risk. So you can have 20 years experience of something, but never trying new things out. You don't have 20 years experience. You have 0 years experience. You have 20 years. So experience, if experience then means to take risk and try new things, then that is creativity. So experience only comes from being creative. The word experience, now not the meaning we put into it, but the profound meaning of the word experience is only from trying new things and taking risk. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you say that some industries are not creative. I call bullshit on that. I've met so many artists and musicians that are not totally uncreative. We're not talking about cultural expression here. We're talking about creativity, and every industry needs to be creative. Every industry. I've interviewed tens of thousands of people. I'm yet to meet someone where creativity is not, including thousands of accountants. So yes, accounting is changing a lot right now. If you're not creative as an accountant right now, you'll be obsolete 10 years from now. So that is total. That's also total crap. And and what was the third? What was the first thing? The first question you said there were three things.
The first question was, an entrepreneur and a freelancer can afford to be creative, but if I'm in a particular job where there is structure, where there are certain things which are expected out of me, and I'm doing the same thing over and over again, I don't need to be creative. I just need to meet my deadlines and meet my standards.
Yeah, but no one. Yeah, but we can. Those jobs where someone just does something over and over without thinking are very rapidly being automated, including accounting.
Yes.
So if you're in that kind of a job, you should desperately look at what could we automate here so that I can do more important things. Like that's why would you like to have a job like that? That's the. But if you ask me what kills creativity, I think yes, bureaucracy. What do you call that? Hierarchies, like those things really does kill creativity. But then I don't think that's not to say that this person doesn't need to be creative. This person needs a life coach or something. That's what that person needs. And then because creativity, when I've interviewed like people like you about creativity, I always like to say this: creativity comes from the word create, and the word create comes from the word creator, and the word creator means God, right? So we are never more divine in our own words than we are when we are creative, and then when we have a really good idea. The feeling you have when you have a really good idea is only beaten by the feeling of passionately falling in love with someone. That's the only reason, the only human emotion stronger than having a really, really, really good idea. So if we are in a situation, it's like if we're living a life or having a job where we don't get to experience this feeling, we are in the wrong place. It's like it's like we should fall in love and we should have ideas. That's what life is almost all about.
Frederick, there are two types of people that I often stumble across, and I hear their managers. One who says, this is the person who comes with a lot of ideas, but the action on ground never gets expressed or the ideas don't get executed. And there are like the second set of people who are brilliant executors, but they don't come up with ideas. The people who are creative, do you think they are at the cusp of ideating as well as doing, or they are ideating only? What has your experience been like?
No, they are in both. They are in both categories. And the best, of course, would be if you can find a person that has a lot of ideas and also is good at executing them. If I had to pick one, I would pick the execute. I will pick the one who's good at executing to teach that person to have a little bit better ideas. But it's not a competition. It's like left brain or right brain, or left hand and right hand, or I don't know, pepper and salt or whatever. We need both. Like we need more people to come up with more ideas and crazier ideas. We need all of that, more ideation, way more ideation. But we also need more people to be better at executing and making ideas happen and killing ideas. We need all of that. We need people to be better at seeing what ideas that other people are implementing. We need people to stop other people from having too bad. I mean, we need naysayers. We need all kinds, but everyone needs to develop their ability to become a more creative, whatever that is. I interviewed one person I was in Lithuania yesterday, interviewing an entrepreneur. He sold a bunch of companies. And he said, I'm not so creative. My wife is the creative one. I said, I'm more about structure or system. Yeah, structure. He said, I'm more about structure. And we talked about it. I said, well, the entrepreneur that is the best at seeing and creating what structure is needed in a startup, that's a super important creative skill. But you can be creative in creating structure, or you can be non-creative in creating structure. Just like you can be creative as a painter or non-creative as a painter. There are painters that are copying Mona Lisa. Are they creative? I don't think so. No, I don't think they're creative at all.
Frederick, you've been doing what you've been doing in the realm of creativity for the last 25 years. That's decently a reasonable amount of time. What keeps you going in terms of keeping your curiosity intact? Are there moments when you feel, I know everything about everything. I know pretty much what creativity is. What keeps you going?
Okay, so here's a good thing that I have. I have zero memory, like zero. Like I have, for example, if I didn't see your name on Zoom, I wouldn't know what your name is. And you shouldn't take that personally. I don't remember anyone's name. So, and if you ask me childhood memory, I can hardly tell you a single childhood memory. If you ask me what I ate yesterday, I don't remember. I have no memory. So, which is like, which if you ask me the name of the people I met at the conference yesterday, I won't remember. So I cannot survive on my knowledge, because it's just not in my head. It just goes in, it goes out again. Which means to be able to even survive in the world and be able to make any kind of add any value, I need to come up with new things. I need to learn new things, and then I need to write about it quickly and get it out. Because then, if you ask me what's in my book, I don't remember. I'm always afraid when someone asks me to reference a chapter in my book. I don't remember what I wrote. So my answer is that, like, as an explorer, I'm the what do you call that when you have no, see, I forget that too. What's the name when you have no memory? Like
amnesia?
Yeah, I'm an explorer, and I'm an explorer with amnesia. So I need to explore new areas because I don't remember what I've already explored, and that's what keeps me going. But my self-defense is that my mind, therefore, because I have very little memory, my mind is very empty, my brain is very empty, and that creates a lot of new opportunities to pick up new things. It's like most people have glasses full of memories. So you can't put in so much more, but my glass is empty, which means I can put a lot of new input in. That's how I make myself feel at least not so stupid.
You have a memory of, I'm sorry, I'm using the word memory, but if you would like to recall an interview which you would call the most fascinating ones, not from the insights one, but when that conversation was happening, there was a lot of, euphoria moments happening in your head. Do you have such kind of a moment with someone?
Yeah, but again, yeah. So, but because of what I just said, I won't remember. So I interviewed the founder of Siri 2 days ago, and it was
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating interview. Like he told me things he'd never told anyone else. Like what was the original name for Siri? I won't tell you what it was, but it wasn't Siri. Uh, and what is the meaning of Siri, and all of these different things. It's fascinating, but it was a wonderful, wonderful interview. It might very well be the one most fascinating one, but it's the last one I did. I always say the last one I did is the most interesting one, and the one I'm going to do next is the most interesting one.
Fredrik, I've seen you in action delivering a keynote where you got like a thunderous standing ovation when you were in Mumbai last time. Have there been also moments where you said, my God, how did that keynote turn out to be, or which was not as good as you thought to be and was full of awkward moments where you didn't get that much kind of client appreciation? And did that deter you from your next thing, or all your keynotes have been widely successful?
I would say I am never happy with a keynote, never. And I don't think you should be. I don't, as an expert in, like, if you something that you do as a profession, I don't think you should ever be happy. I don't think Wayne Gretzky was, I'm not going to compare myself with Wayne Gretzky, but I don't think Wayne Gretzky was ever happy with a game. I saw they just had the World Championships, and the guy, I think the guy who ran the 200 meters, or was it the 400 meters or the 200 hurdles, something like the Norwegian guy, and he won, I think, all the four top participants in that event, in the final, all would have broken the world record if it wouldn't have been for that the guy actually just broke the world. And he said this was more or less the perfect race. But not even then would he say that it was the perfect race. I'm never happy with the speech. I can be happy it went well, but I'm never happy with the speech per se. I will always evaluate what did not go well, and I will always ask the people who come up to me. Anyone who's come up to me after a speech knows that when someone comes up and says, "Wow, that was an amazing speech," I say, "Thank you. What did you like about it?" Like, because I want to know what they like. What was it that made them feel that this was a good speech? But don't worry, when it comes to speakers, people are very quick on telling you what they don't like as well, like performers generally. So that's not hard to find out. And as a speaker, you also know, like if you're good at something, you know. If you write a text, you know which word you should have changed when the book is published. It's you just know.
Fredrik, what would be your message to people in general, or how they can get started in their journey of harnessing creativity? What could be those small actions that they can undertake on daily basis to really build this muscle, irrespective of whatever profession they are in? They may be a homemaker, but what are the few things that they can do to get started in that journey and see how it unfolds for them?
Oh my God. Homemaker is the most creative job, especially if you have kids. My wife and me, we are homeschooled. When COVID came, we decided to take the kids out of school. So we've been homeschooling our kids for a year, and that's the most creative job I've ever had, is to homeschool my kids.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents, some people we choose to do it. Some people have been forced to homeschool and they've hated it. This is the best job I've ever had. I love it because I think we approached it with creativity. Yeah, but curiosity is we talked about that. That's the number one. Positive mindset is the number two, because if you're positive, you will say, well, is there another way of doing it? Well, is there another way of doing it? Like, you really try, like, again, I use the analogy of love. If you're really in love with someone, and like Romeo and Juliet, you will climb up the balcony finally. You just want to see each other. So you will find a way. Like, if you really want something, you will find a way. And that will not happen. I interviewed one of the people I interviewed, this I remember now. She was head negotiator of Scotland Yard in hostage negotiations in places like Sudan, and like where people are being kidnapped for ransom, and a lot of people get killed. And the number one thing to make a hostage negotiator work is that they forget about all the things that went wrong. And I said, well, but that takes away all your experience. I said, no. That I have that inside of me, but I am not allowed to think about it when I negotiate, because if I get one negative thought into my head, they might sense that I am doubting this. I always need to say, like she mentioned, for example, let's say someone said something about, okay, we're going to order food, so can you give us McDonald's? And then suddenly, okay, that's it. they mention McDonald's. There must be a McDonald's close to where they are. Suddenly, from not knowing where they are at all, suddenly we know they are close to a McDonald's, right? That's because that's what they said. It could be a sound of a bird in the background. You know, I need to find that one clue, because you are talking to someone who doesn't want to give you any clues, and your job is to get a clue. So if she's had any, to focus on all the positive signs that you can possibly, anything they give you, and you just focus on that. Because that is how you solve the whole, and I think that's true for all creativity. There's a reason why you call it, you know, hanging on to a straw, right, or holding on to the end of the rope. That is the clinging to hope. That is what creative people do. They just try to, there must be a way, and then we find a way.
You said how Scotland Yard negotiators are actually negotiating with the witnesses, and how they take cue from the most simplest mention like McDonald's, and take a clue about where they would have kept the hostages, or the reference to homemakers being the most creative people, because in the last 2 years, if one thing we've done is being very creative with our kids. So that was about it. I want to know from you, Fredrik, very specific ideas about what comes in the way of creativity. And here I'm not referring to bureaucratic systems or hierarchy in organization, or an organization where the culture doesn't support creative people because it is that structured and systematic. But for us only, what are those self-limiting things that come in the way of experiencing and experimenting with creativity?
Yeah, many things. I think like the reason I did the idea book as a book and a notebook is because most people don't write down their ideas, and they don't have a system for writing down ideas. That's an important thing. I do that. I also do it now on the computer, and that's an important one. I think people haven't thought about their own creative process enough. They don't know when they are creative, what kills their creativity. For example, I'm doing this call on my island, so this is a special year. So I have an island in Sweden, and we usually live 2 months per year on this island. Just our family is the only one on this island. This year we spent 5 months on this island, but it's because it's COVID and we just wanted to spend more time here. But generally, my idea is I need to travel around the world. I need to meet as many people as I can. I need to many people from as many different backgrounds and countries and cultures and whatever, because all these things give me new ideas. And then I need to sit 2 months on an island and do nothing, because then my brain can combine everything that they saw. That's the perfect creative process for me, but maybe not for everyone else. Some people, I'm an introvert. A lot of people are extroverts. They need to be together with a lot of people in a room to be the most creative. I hate that. I don't hate it, but it doesn't work very well. If I'm in a big room, even if I was in a conference yesterday in Lithuania, it was 1,500 people. I sit in I sit in the right-hand corner throughout the whole conference. I'm just observing and looking and listening to people, and then I choose who I go and talk to. Usually people like the speakers who I know that they've been selected there because they are there to send a message, and I want to learn more about them. So think about your own creative process and evaluate if you're living your life according to that creative process. Let's call it life design. I think a lot of people are not designing the life the way they want it to be, and that is hugely affecting your creativity. One person I interviewed, it's a good example. She talked about she was in one of those boring jobs, and she was full of tattoos, very creative woman, but she was in a boring, like not insurance, but some kind of insurance company. And she said, what do you call that, pottery, like what do you call it when you do pottery on a wheel, like I don't remember the English word for it, but anyway, she was doing pottery on and she called that her creative outlet. Finally, a way for me to be, I would go crazy. And I said, why do you look at it as a creative outlet? Why don't you look at it as a creative inlet? That you go there and suddenly your creativity flows into you, and then use that energy and go back to your job and see if you can use some of that energy you got on Monday. And suddenly she was starting to do more creative things at work. And after a while, she was working with a CEO and was like working on an innovation project inside a company. And suddenly that pottery thing was the thing that fed her creative energy that she can now use to change her job. So creative inlets is a better way of thinking of it than creative outlets. Because it's like water. If you're an outlet, it flows out of you, but you want it to flow into you. You want creative energy to flow into you, so that creativity can flow out of you.
It's an interesting analogy that you just gave here, that a lot of people look for creative outlet, but you need to create creative inlet and get all that energy and express it into something else. And you also spoke about life design, Fredrik. So could you throw some more light on this life design part and thinking about your creative process? What do these two things mean? Like you gave an example that you go to your island and you consolidate all the learnings when you have that kind of possibility and provision. But how do people get started on this journey of life design? Because I see a lot of people say we are controlled by externalities than ourselves. So, and I'm sure life design needs a bit of control on yourself. So how does one go about it?
It's not that, it's not that complicated. It's more about sitting down and writing things that you like and things that you don't like with your life right now, things that you used to like about your life that you don't have anymore, things you would like to have in your life, like bucket lists and so on. But I give you an example. When COVID started, and I saw COVID very early, because as a speaker, I'm living in Singapore, conferences got canceled in Singapore before in any other country, like almost 2 months before America, for example. So I knew very quickly that there were not going to be any conferences, global conferences in the world. So speaking would be dead for a while. And what are we going to do? And I said to my wife, you know what? If you look at the last pandemic, and you look at how people are describing it, you look at Downton Abbey when the Spanish flu came, and that's the most sad episode in Downton Abbey. My wife is a big Downton Abbey fan. It's like, this is going to happen. This is going to be it's going to be that episode in Downton Abbey is what we're going to live through. Yeah. And we said to ourselves, and we made a conscious decision, and we said, our children are going to remember the flu of 2021, the COVID pandemic, as the most happy part of their childhood. That was our theme for the pandemic. And that including taking them out of school and homeschooling them, because now daddy is not going to travel, he's going to be home. So, and my kids are 6, 8, and 10. And so now I said, you know what, I'm going to get so much time with these kids, and anyone who has kids that are old say, I wish I spent more time with them when they were young. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to be that parent. I'm never going to say that. So I've spent so much time with my kids. I call it pre-tire. I pre-tired. So for the last 18 months, I pre-tired. I didn't retire. I didn't stop being a speaker, but I pre-tired. I took like 18 months, 75% off. And I spend that time being with my kids. 6 out of those months will be on an island and just, playing badminton or swimming or something. And our kids will remember COVID as the time that they had so much time with, like the longest summer holiday of their lives. That's how they're going to remember it. But the only thing that is different is that we sat down and made a conscious decision in March 2019. What do we want to do with the COVID? Like, what are we going to do with this? How it is going to affect our lives? And we said our children will remember it as the most fun part of their childhood. That was the guiding light for our pandemic. And I'm not saying other parents should have done what we did. I'm saying every person who did that in the beginning of the pandemic have had a wonderful pandemic. Unless they got sick, of course. But I mean, the health. But it's important. Like we stayed in Singapore, which was the safest place on earth. And when Singapore had been in a lockdown for over a year, we went to Sweden and stayed on an island, which is the safest place on earth to be, because I mean, it's basically a self-provoked quarantine. So it also included health decisions. Now, of course, you can still get it. I mean, if you get it, it doesn't mean you made a bad decision. You could also be unlucky, or you had to, or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying all these decisions are easy. I am saying if you sat down and make conscious decisions over how you want your life to look, it's a much bigger chance you get what you wanted.
Fredrik, as we come towards the culmination of the show, I want to know from you that you have met massively successful people, and you have also met people from diverse background and also some very unconventional places which do not come with a lot of luxury and basic amenities also. I want to know from you, what has been the rate of failures in these people's life? Because creativity does entail a fair degree of newer approaches, newer experimentations, and it's not that 100% of the times those approaches are going to work. So, how important is failures, goof ups, or screw ups in this creative journey? Or is it mandatory that each creative pursuit should lead to something massively successful?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a leading question. So, but I don't think creative people think in aspects of failure. I have an interesting twist on it though. One of the people I interviewed, she is a glass artist, and she talked about the merienda moment. Merienda means holy shit in Spanish. It's like fuck. And merienda. And she was trying to create artwork, glass art, like art sculptures, very, very advanced ones. And it kept cracking, like the glass. It takes something like 6 weeks for the glass to slowly cool down. And then when she opened it, it was cracked. She had to start over again. And she got so frustrated, so angry. Finally, she said, mierda, why is this happening? And it created so much energy in her. She went to the library, she started reading physics books, she interviewed experts in glass and like, what's going on with the glass? And finally she cracked it and she figured out something that no one else knew. And now she's able to do glass pieces that no one else knows how to do. And so that is a specific kind of failure. It's a failure that pushes you forward. And you need to know when that failure happened. But that is a specific kind of failure. The failure that gives you positive energy and positive boost to break through a problem. That is the mierda moment. And you need to be aware that that happens and push through. When it could be kind of playing a computer game, someone gives you a boost button, you need to press the button and boost away. So I think that's an interesting twist on this. And she gave me a photograph of one of her cracked glasses that she has in her studio to remind her of that positive energy that can come from failing. But not all failure creates that positive energy. That's the twist. A lot of times you fail and you go, oh man, this is just terrible, and then you move on, you get more depressed. Like that is the negative. But then one of those, like for example, Losec, the medicine, according to someone I read, I think that might be in the book actually, they're doing tests on dogs and the dogs kept dying, and finally all the dogs in the test died, and everyone was like, oh my god, this is not working. But the guy in charge said, no, this is the thing, suddenly all the dogs died, this is a breakthrough, why did all the dogs die? And that was the thing that got them to work it out.
I like this thing that you need to have those failures that push you forward instead of completely throwing you off in the abyss of negativity. Fredrik, towards a closure, I want to ask from you, what is your closing message to people at large about creativity, about why they should be investing their time in this pursuit? And the second question, which I think somehow got missed out in the myriad questions that I was asking you, according to you, is creativity a leadership skill or a life skill?
Okay, so I'll do the second one first then. It's a life skill, and leadership is one of the life skills. So that answers that question. And my message is, well, I am the creativity explorer. My slogan is discover your full creative potential. And I mean that in the discover as in as an explorer discovers. So that if you go out and really, if you live your life thinking that your goal is to go out and explore as much as you can so that you can discover your full creative potential. And when you do that, then you'll have a wonderful life. I mean, that is, I don't care if that's Anthony Bourdain becoming Anthony Bourdain or Simone Biles becoming Simone Biles or whatever. I mean, when you find your skill, your skill in life, and creativity is such a big part of that, when you discover that, yeah, you get to live an amazing life, and everyone has something like that in them. Doesn't have to mean that become famous or world champions, but it means it could become a really, really good sushi chef if that's what it is, or the best mom or whatever. But it creates. I was listening to ABBA is Swedish, and they just in their 70s they launched a new album, which is amazing and it's perfect. And I saw the launch, and they were interviewing Björn and Benny. And Benny said, why are you doing an album? And they said, well, I write every day. Every day I write a song. But then suddenly I wrote this song. I said, this could be an ABBA song. And I said, let's do two. And then they said, when they got that click, maybe we should do an album. That was the idea that popped into their head. And they got so much energy out of that they said yes. And then they just had to do it. The energy just pushed them to do it. And not only did they do an album, they now created an avatar show. They're building a new house in London. They're going to be the first ever 3D animated show of this scale, and they're doing this in their 70s. Like, they got a new energy, a new boost of life into them, a creative energy. That's comes down to that divine feeling like gods when we have a really good idea. Maybe we should do another ABBA album.
Fredrik, it's been, I would not say insightful, but I would say fun and insightful conversation talking to you. And there've been like a myriad learnings. But few things that I'm really taking away from this conversation is the way you expounded the meaning of the word curiosity, which somehow got related to care about what you do. And because it means being curious means to create, and creativity means to create, you feel like God, and that's such a divine feeling. And I think it's so true. When you know that you're in the flow, your potential is getting harnessed. I think it's one of the best feelings in the world. I like this entire idea that for people to get started in their creative journey, they need to understand what are the time zones where they're most creative, what's working in their life, what's not working in their life. And I like the expression that you used, that Pradima, it's not all that difficult. They just need to be with themselves and answer a few questions, and they'll get some insight starting there. I liked this metaphor of beautiful thinking, which means irrespective of whatever chaos you're into, you can find that moment which is beautiful and dwell on it, which really slips you in the zone of calmness. I like the story of the Scotland Yard that you gave, the conversation with your Swedish princess. I think I'm going to be using those anecdotes while giving full credit to you, because I didn't come up with them, and nobody would believe that I spoke to a Swedish princess. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation you had with Reed Hastings, because that's one of the goals that's written on my board here, to interview him someday. But I'm sure that will be coming through your book. So thank you so much, Fredrik, for taking the conversation forward. I think I can't express my excitement, because I'm a bit of an introvert myself, but it means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and take care. Bye-bye.
Creativity rules.
Yes, creativity rules.